Hello everyone. In this lecture, we discuss about the functionaries which works under the code. The main functionaries exercising powers and discharging duties under the criminal procedure code are police, prosecutors, defense counsel, magistrates and judges of higher courts, and prison authorities and correctional services personnel. So in this lecture, we discuss the role, jurisdiction, powers and duties of each of these functionaries in detail. About the police. The police force is an instrument for the prevention and detection of the crime, and it is established and enrolled by every state government under the Police Act 1861 or under a state enactment replacing the Act of 1861. In each state, the Inspector General of Police is in charge of the overall administration of the state police force. However, the administration of police in every district vests in the district superintendent of the police under the general control and direction of the district magistrate, who is usually the collector of the district. The criminal procedure code confers specific powers, for example, power to make arrest, search, etc., on the members of the police force who are enrolled as police officers. The police officers who are in charge of police stations have been given wider powers as they are required by the code to play a pivotal role in the investigation and prevention of crime, but they do not have powers to look into complaints which do not contain allegations of commission of cognizable offences. Police officers superior in rank to an officer in charge of a police station can exercise the same powers throughout the local area to which they are appointed as may be exercised by such a station house officer within the limits of his station. So under section 177 and 178 of the criminal procedure code, police has wide jurisdiction enabling them to inquire into a complaint which has already been filed in another jurisdiction. And coming to the second functionary, it is the prosecutors. And so if a crime is a wrong not only against the individual victim, but it is also a crime is a crime is a wrong not only against the individual victim but also against the state. Therefore, the state takes upon itself, at least in a case of serious offences, the responsibility of prosecuting the accused persons. So for that purpose, the central government and each state government have power to appoint prosecutors for conducting prosecutions and other criminal proceedings on their behalf in the high courts, sessions court or the court of magistrate. So it has been specifically provided that in every trial before a sessions court, the prosecution shall be conducted by a public prosecutor. However, no specific provision has been made in the code in respect of the conduct of prosecution in the courts of magistrate. According to the prevailing practice in respect of cases initiated on police report, the prosecution is conducted by the assistant public prosecutor, and in cases initiated on a private complaint, the prosecution is either conducted by the complainant himself or by his duly authorized counsel. In such cases also, the state can appoint prosecutors if the cause has public interest. And the public prosecutor has powers to withdraw from prosecution when application for withdrawal is filed by the public prosecutor. He has the sole responsibility, and the law casts an obligation that he should be satisfied on the basis of materials on record, keeping in view certain legal parameters. So The amendments to the Criminal Procedure Code effected in 2005 envisaged the states to establish a directorate of prosecution consisting a director of prosecution and deputy directors of prosecutions. Advocates having 10 years practice could be appointed as director or deputy directors, and they would function under the Home Department. Director of prosecution shall be in charge of the directorate. All the prosecutors working at the High Court would work directly under the director. The prosecutors, including special prosecutors functioning in the district courts and APP, would work under the deputy directors, who in turn would be subordinates to the director. The powers and functions of the director, including the territorial jurisdiction of the deputy directors, may be specified by the state government by notification. So, this scheme is a departure from the setup originally envisaged under the Code of 1973, and there is going to be active coordination and cooperation between the police and the prosecution, though theoretically speaking, it may give the impression of making the independence of the public prosecutor suspicious. These provisions are not applicable to the Attorney General when he acts as public prosecutor. And coming to the third functionary, that is the Defense Counsel. The adversary system of criminal trial, which we have adapted, assumes that the state, using its investigative resources and employing a competent prosecutor, would prosecute the accused, who in turn will employ an equally competent defense counsel to challenge the evidence of the prosecution. Therefore, both the Constitution of India and the Code confer on the accused person a right to consult and to be defended by a legal practitioner of his choice. The right to counsel would, however, remain empty if the accused, due to his poverty or indigent conditions, has no means to engage a counsel for his defense. The indigent accused obviously stands the risk of denial of a fair trial when he does not have equal access to the legal services available to the opposite side. To an extent, the Criminal Procedure Code has attempted to find a solution to this problem, and it has been provided that where in a trial before the Sessions Court, the accused is not represented by a pleader, and where it appears to the court that the accused has not sufficient means to engage a pleader, the court shall assign a pleader for his defense at the expense of the state. So, Section 304 of this code deals with this, and further the code has empowered the state government to extend the application of the above provision to any class of trials before the other courts in the state. So, in this context, it may be pertinent to note that the provisions of Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 enable the judiciary to provide legal representation to indigent accused, and if the services provided are found wanting, the trial may be vitiated. And the next functionary which works under the Criminal Procedure Code is courts, and we discuss about the courts in coming slides. First, we discuss about the prison authorities and correctional services personnel. At the conclusion of the trial, if the accused is found guilty, the court is required to pass sentence on him or to deal with him under the probation laws or other special laws for the reformation and rehabilitation of the offenders. If the court passes a sentence on the offender, the sentence shall be executed in accordance with the provisions of the code, and the code, however, does not make specific provisions for the creation, working and control of any machinery needed for this purpose, and depends only upon the laws like the Prison Act 1894, Prisoners Act 1900, Boston Schools Act 8, etc. So even Regarding the machinery needed for correctional services, the code entirely depends upon the laws like Probation of Offenders Act 1958, Boston Schools Act, Reformatory School Act 1897, etc. It might be noted here that we need for such services would be considerably increase in the coming years in view of the greater emphasis laid by the code on the use of Probation of Offenders Act 1958 and of the other laws meant for the treatment, training and rehabilitation of young offenders. So this is about prison authorities and correctional services. In this slide we can see the figure of the courts, how the hierarchy of criminal courts are classified and their powers to pass sentences. In this slide, we can discuss the hierarchy of criminal courts in detail. The courts are one of the important functionaries which works under the Criminal Procedure Code. First, we see about Supreme Court. The Constitution establishes the Supreme Court and defines its jurisdiction and powers. Article 124, 129, 130, 132, 134, 136, 139, 141, 144, 145 of the Constitution deals with this. And the code further makes provision of appeal to the Supreme Court under certain circumstances and also enables the Supreme Court to transfer cases and appeals in the interest of justice. So the Supreme Court also exercises appellate jurisdiction in criminal cases under the provisions of the Supreme Court Enlargement of Criminal Appellate Jurisdiction Act 1970. So the Supreme Court can pass any sentence which is authorized by law. And in this slide we see about the High Court. The Constitution provides for the establishment of a High Court for each state and generally defines the jurisdiction of such a High Court. Article 214, 215, 227 and 228 etc. of the Constitution deals with this. And the High Court has got superintendents over all courts throughout the concerned state. And the code also provides that the superintendence over the courts of judicial magistrate is to be exercised as to ensure as a expeditious and proper disposal of cases in such courts. And the code gives to the High Court various powers, including those relating to reference, appeal, revision and transfer of cases. And it also recognizes specifically the inherent power of the High Court to prevent the abuse of the process of any court, or to secure the ends of justice. And in simple, we can say that it has superintendence over all the courts, and it can pass any sentence which is authorized by law. And coming to sessions court, the state is to establish a sessions court for every sessions division, and the court is to be presided over by a judge appointed by the High Court, and the High Court may also appoint additional sessions judges and assistant sessions judges to exercise jurisdiction in the sessions court. An assistant sessions judge is subordinate to the sessions judge. In simple, we can say that the sessions court can impose any sentence which is authorized by law, but in case of death sentence, the confirmation of the High Court is necessary. Here we can see the courts of judicial magistrates. In every district, the state government may, after consultation with the High Court, establish as many courts of judicial magistrates of the first class and of the second class as it may consider necessary. The state government may also, after consultation with the High Court, establish for any local area one or more special courts of judicial magistrates of the first class or of the second class to try any particular case or particular class of cases. Where any such special court has been established, no other court of magistrate in the local area shall have jurisdiction to try any such case or class of cases. So the presiding officer of such courts, including special courts, shall be appointed by the High Court, and the High Court may also confer powers of a judicial magistrate on any member of the judicial services of the state functioning as a judge in a civil court. And the High Court is also required to appoint a judicial magistrate of first class to be the chief judicial magistrate. We can call him as CJM of the district. His main function is to guide, supervise, and control the other judicial magistrate. And he might also try important cases also. And the High Court may appoint any judicial magistrate of the first class to be an additional CJM. And such magistrate shall have or any of the powers of CJM as the High Court may direct. For any subdivision of your district, the High Court may appoint any judicial magistrate of the first class as the subdivisional magistrate, who shall have powers of supervision and control over the work of the judicial magistrates in the subdivision. And unless defined differently by the chief judicial magistrate, the local jurisdiction and the powers of a judicial magistrate would extend throughout the district. And every chief judicial magistrate shall be subordinate to the sessions judge, and every other judicial magistrate shall, subject to the general control of the sessions judge, be subordinate to the CJM. And in this slide we can see the courts of metropolitan magistrate. In every metropolitan area, the state government may, after consultation with the High Court, establish courts of metropolitan magistrate at such places and in such numbers as it thinks necessary. The presiding officers of such courts shall be appointed by the High Court, and the jurisdiction and powers of every such magistrate shall extend throughout the metropolitan area. And in every metropolitan area, the High Court shall appoint a metropolitan magistrate as CMM. We can call him as Chief Metropolitan Magistrate, and it may also appoint additional Chief Metropolitan Magistrate, and such magistrates shall have generally all the powers of Chief Metropolitan Magistrates. And the CMM and every additional CMM shall be subordinate to the sessions judge, and every other metropolitan magistrate shall subject to the general control of sessions judge and be subordinate to the CMM. So the metropolitan magistrates and the special metropolitan magistrates can impose imprisonment up to 3 years and fine up to 10,000. And special metropolitan magistrates also, they can also impose imprisonment up to 3 years and fine up to 10,000. coming to special judicial or metropolitan magistrates in any district or metropolitan area, the High Court, on the request of the government concerned, may confer upon any government servant or retired government servant all or any of the powers of a judicial magistrate or of a metropolitan magistrates, as the case may be, in respect of particular cases or particular classes of cases. Such a government servant must, however, possesses such qualification or experience in relation to legal affairs as specified in the rules made by the High Court in this behalf. So, the appointment of any such special magistrate shall be only for a period of not exceeding 1 year at a time. And the Supreme Court, in its judgment, has upheld the constitutional validity of Section 13(1) and 18(1) of the Code as not violative of Article 14 of the Constitution, and thereby overruling the judgment of the Madras High Court in one case, that is M. Narayana Swamy versus State of Tamil Nadu. And the Supreme Court has directed that though the High Court is to be the sole appointing authority, special care has to be taken that persons with necessary qualifications and experience in relation to legal affairs are appointed. Finally, here we see the courts of executive magistrates here. The code has adopted the policy of separation of the judiciary from the executive. Therefore, it has created a separate category of courts which are distinct from the courts of judicial magistrates. And the object of the policy of separation is to ensure the independent functioning of the judiciary, free of all suspicion of executive influence and control. Therefore, the judicial magistrates and the metropolitan magistrates are put under the control of the High Court, while the executive magistrates are kept under the control of the state government. Broadly speaking, the functions which are essentially judicial in nature are the concern of the judicial magistrate, while functions which are police or administrative in nature are the concern of the executive magistrates. And in every district and in every metropolitan area, the state government may appoint executive magistrates and shall appoint one of them to be the district magistrate. It may also appoint an additional district magistrate (ADM) for a subdivisional magistrate. The state government may be general or special orders. By general or special orders delegates its power under Section 24 of appointing subdivisional magistrates to district magistrates. So these provisions would not, however, affect the practice sanctioned by local laws of conferring magisterial powers of executive nature on a commissioner of police. So the state government may also appoint special executive magistrates for particular areas or for performing particular functions of an executive magistrate. And unless otherwise defined by the district magistrate, the jurisdiction and the powers of every executive magistrate extends throughout the district or the metropolitan area, as the case may be. And all the executive magistrates other than the ADM shall be subordinate to the district magistrate, and every executive magistrate exercising powers in a subdivision shall also be subordinate to the subdivisional magistrate, subject to, however, to the general control of the district magistrate. In certain matters, executive magistrates are subordinate to the district court. So this is about the hierarchy of criminal courts.